Welcome to the Business Building Blocks podcast, where we talk about the struggles and celebrations that leaders and entrepreneurs experience on their journey to success. I'm your host, Kristina, and I'm passionate about helping you achieve massive amounts of success at work and at home. We'll talk about all things people and organizational wellness, share relatable stories, and feature insightful guests because quality people and processes are at the heart of every success story. Ready to learn, grow, and have fun? Let's dive in. Hello and welcome to the Business Building Blocks podcast. I'm your host, Kristina Schmitt. Let me see if this is you. You're working tons of hours, yet you have a team and you just don't feel like they care as much as you do. You feel like they come to you with every problem. You're pulled away from family vacations, from your nights out, from meetings. And if you go away, you're like, oh, I can't go away because everything will fall apart without me. Does this sound like you? It's okay to say yes because there are so many other people in your place. And today I'm going to give you some insight and most importantly, some very practical things you can do to start moving away from this dependency. So many times I get leaders that come to me and they're saying, my employees just don't care, or they just don't want to take responsibility for what they're doing. And they think it's an employee problem. They think something is wrong with them. Why don't they care? Why don't they want to do as well as I want to do, or me and like the original team want to do? What's going on? And the reality is that it might be something to do with them, but there's a really good chance it's something to do with you too. I know that feels hard, doesn't it? So what we're going to do is we're going to walk through some possibilities, and then we're going to walk through how you can lead this both in understanding whether there's something you're doing or not doing that can help, or if there's, a direction you needed to take with it. So let's dive in. We love these words, don't we? Okay. So what's actually going on here? So if somebody isn't taking responsibility, it's likely one of three big buckets of things, right? I've talked about the first two before, and I probably talked about the third one too, but I'm going to put it all together in one episode for you. So the first thing is they might actually not have the skill to deal with the thing that they're being asked to deal with. So, a customer problem comes up, they might not actually know how to resolve it. So that's the skill problem. If you discover that's the case, you can see what you can help them with as far as development and as far as learning that skill, or maybe that's a skill they don't have. And you can deal with that. It's very practical to deal with. Number two, they may not have the will to do it. So that can feel like a human or an employee problem, but they might lack the confidence in doing it, or they might lack the motivation in doing it. So this leads to a different set of solutions, and it might start with you. And the third kind of big bucket of reasoning of why they would probably not want to take responsibility is because they've been trained to not take responsibility. You're saying, what? What do you mean? What do you mean? I want people to take responsibility. So when we think about, you may have heard the statement of, you got to walk the talk, that kind of thing. We can say that we want people to take responsibility, but if our behaviors and what we actually do, so our actions, don't actually say that, then we may be teaching people inadvertently to not take responsibility. So let's dig into this one a little bit more, and then we'll dig into kind of the overall what we should do. So when people aren't taking responsibility and it's because they've been trained this way, let's talk about that and what that looks like. So going back a couple of episodes ago, I had a model called the ABC model. So it was the antecedent, the behavior, and the consequence. Ultimately, what that one shows us, I guess you could say, and how we can use that model is that we can set an expectation and then observe behaviors, and then there's always a consequence. So sometimes that consequence is something that we are doing, and sometimes it's a natural consequence, and sometimes it's something we're not doing, which is, again, a natural consequence. So ultimately what happens when we look at behavior change and really how people behave, it's because of that consequence. So what they think will or will not happen when they're done. or after they've done the thing. Let's say your employee comes in and every time they have an idea, you come in and they show it to you, then you build on it, tweak it, and somehow make them feel that it's not the best idea or it could be better. They may learn through those interactions that my ideas aren't good enough. The boss wants a final say, or it's not ready for prime time until he approves it or she approves it. So there's learned behavior there. The consequence that always happens when they have an idea or a solution is that you give feedback, change it slightly, and then it's okay to do. So now they've learned I can't do anything without getting approval first. So that's one thing, right? Similarly, if every single time somebody has a question and they come to you, you provide the answer. Now people come to you with more questions because now they don't have to do the research. And now they are sure that you'll be happy with it because you told them what to do. So now they've learned this behavior. They know if I go to, Sally the boss and I say, hey, I've got this question, even though I know I could have probably looked it up, they know the answer. So it's faster for me to go to them. And now I learned that. So because that's what always happens. So I'm going to keep doing that because it makes my life easier. And they know it and they like to answer my questions, obviously. Otherwise, they'd stop doing it. Is that true? Right. So we need to realize that our behaviors or our giving of consequences are actually reinforcing the behavior that's there. So we've got to take a look at that. So that's how they can learn it within the culture. Also, another thing, if we tend to mimic what our leaders do, because whether you want to believe it or not, as the leader, we set the culture of our business. People will act like we do. People will do the things that we do, and they will believe that the things that we put weight to are important and are the things that need to get done. So let's dig into this. If you're running around, going from meeting to meeting, putting out fires, you only get things done when there's a fire. If that's what you do and how you behave as a leader, that's what your team's going to do too. So they're going to be firefighting all the time. Projects will always be put on the back burner. Coming late to meetings is a norm. And obviously the boss does it, so it's fine if I do it. So you've got to, again, think about, okay, what have I taught them? Because when we talk about culture and these behavioral norms that are part of our culture, the leader sets them. So we have to be careful what we do and how we behave, because that is how our teams will also behave. And the last one, and this one might be hard because you might not see that you're doing it, but people will live up to the expectation that is set for them. So let's dig into that a little bit more, because that might be like, what? So sometimes we treat people like they don't know what they're doing. So I'm going to actually take it even simpler. Let's think about kids. Okay. So obviously when babies are there, they can't walk and go get themselves things. So as a parent, you get used to getting them things. But if you never take a step back and say, oh, obviously they can now get their cup from the bottom drawer, they should be getting their own cup from the bottom drawer, because that's taking responsibility. That's learning something. And their expectations, like my expectations for them, should go up at this point in their lives. And they should be taking more responsibility. If we never do that, then we end up like bringing our 15-year-olds drinks all the time and end up being like feeling like they're servant. And then they become these irresponsible kids that never take responsibility or ownership for anything. The same thing happens in the workplace. Somebody starts new. Maybe it's their first job. They're super green, and we do a lot for them, because if you're onboarding people, there is a staged level of expectations that you should have for them. But if we never move off that initial expectation, people will just continue to operate in that low level of expectation, bringing every question to you, hoping that you're going to solve their problems for them. And what that does is, if you have a go-getter who wants more responsibility, they'll get really frustrated and probably leave, or do the quiet quitting, which is really just disengaged employee, and just say, all right, I guess I don't have to do anything at this job. I'm going to go start my own business over here and then quit when I get it going. But if you have a go-getter, you're going to lose them. essentially. And if you have somebody who might naturally really enjoy someone doing the things for them, like maybe they were raised in an environment where everything was done for them, or maybe they lack some self-esteem and they think, oh, I can't do it, but they get very comfortable in that, then you're not helping them grow and develop. And you get somebody and a bunch of team members that are very dependent upon you. And what does that do? That's going to constrain your time. That's going to make you do their jobs for them when they shouldn't. And they're going to be a disengaged workforce and, whoa, look at this, not take responsibility for things. So what we have to do is we have to start challenging people. We can't be afraid to let them think and let them do things. But how do we go from where we are today to where we want to be? Do not just go on vacation for 3 weeks and say, oh, just go figure it out, guys, because that's not going to work. Because they're used to what's always been done. They're used to you answering all of the questions, tweaking everything, always coming up with the best answer and the best solution, and they depend on you. So we're looking at making a behavior change. And I've talked about this several times, especially because this new year is just getting rolling. We don't go from 0 to 60, or we cannot make an instant, huge life change that's sustainable very quickly, especially in our behaviors, because it's going to feel hard. A great way that I've seen it explained, or I've heard it explained, is you've got to think about, like, you've got our neural pathways. So this is how we act. We've worn these grooves out, right? And so if you think about your behavior patterns, they're very well grooved in your mind, right? There's a big divot where you've always been thinking. And now you're trying to ask people to basically like outrun the divot and like operate in a different lane. That is not simple. So we all need some kind of support to help change where that divot is so that we can we can change. So we can change our behavior so that we can do something different. So this is what we need to do. We need to use this philosophy, is what I'm going to say, is when problems come, we need to ask, not tell. Okay. So if you were around in the 90s, there was a don't ask, don't tell sort of policy, I think, in the military. I'm saying it as an ask, but don't tell. Okay, so we do want to ask. Our tendency is likely to be to tell, because sometimes it feels that that's what we have to do. I know for me personally, when I started in leadership, I was young and a woman, and I felt like I needed to show I knew what I was doing. So I was like, I need to tell the answer. This is how I prove that I know what I'm doing, is I show them by telling them things, right? And all it did was make me tell them the things all the time. And then I stayed over involved in areas I shouldn't have been, and it did not work. We'll just say that. What we need to do is, it's not about us showing that we know what we're doing. Like, obviously we know what we're doing because we're leading them. Maybe we're the business owner, or whatever it might be. Like, we know what we're doing. Our job as a leader is to make sure they know what they're doing and to make sure we're all doing it in the same direction. So your best bet is to start asking questions. So if someone comes to you, hey boss, I've got this, customer called and they want to make this change and or whatever it might be, right? So some kind of problem that typically you have helped solve in the past. What I want you to do is ask a question. Ask, what do you think we should do? Or, where have you gotten to so far? And just ask a very curious question to get them, number one, thinking, and number two, see where they're at. Because again, we're trying to assess, do they have the skill to do this? Do they have the will to do this? Or have we trained them to act this way? So what you might get is, I was actually thinking to do this, this, and this. And if we call this person here, we can actually do this. And, they might have this whole plan laid out, because maybe it's actually a really regular occurrence, but it's slightly special and slightly different. So maybe they have the whole plan in their head. Then you can say, awesome, that sounds like you're on the right track. Exactly what I would have done. Go do it. But then you can ask the next curiosity question and say, so you knew what you were doing. Why'd you come? Why'd you come to me? And you might get some intel of, I thought you might want to know, or I thought, you just like to be involved, that kind of thing. And then you can have a wonderful discussion about, hey, these things, I know you can do this. You've got this. You can handle these sorts of situations. Or, you know what, thanks. You can shoot me an email next time. Let me know, just to keep me informed of what's happening. But I know that you know how to handle these things, and I trust your judgment, whatever it might be. And it is going to depend on who this person is and like what levels of things they're doing. But you can start to work through clarifying these sorts of expectations and teaching them that they've got this. They've They're capable of handling these situations and they can do it without you. Does that sound scary? It might for a little bit. So, because again, you have to change your neural pathways just as much as they have to change their neural pathways. So when we're trying to do that, it's going to take stages. So more than likely, you're not going to come up with this new expectation after question 1. So you're going to need to do it again and again and again and kind of keep trying to hone in, like, what is it exactly, which situations are your realm and which situations do you need to consult with me still? So it might take a few iterations. Some aspects might be super clear and others might take a little bit more thinking around and working through and kind of a check-in sort of thing. But what you're doing here is you're giving them some confidence that their decisions and their thoughts are correct. And that is huge. When you talk about people taking responsibility, having that level of confidence to say, I know I'm operating within the same wavelength as the boss, then that's a good thing. Right? Like, then I feel good about what I'm doing. I feel like we're on track. I feel like I'm not going to do something that's going to make everyone go, what would we do? Right? So allowing them an ability to run things by you and giving them this clarity around it is huge. What else you might see, right? So you might like that's great if they knew what they were going to do and, it's awesome. What you might see is they might go, I don't know. So let's not assume this is a lack of skill right away. And there's more investigation to be had here because the I don't know might just be like they just didn't think about it because they're not used to thinking about it. So you might have to ask a few more prying questions like, okay, well, what did we do? Have we seen anything like this before? What did we do the last time? Like a couple of other like prying questions, not prying, but like discovery questions to try to understand, is it that they really don't know and they really have no clue how to address this thing? Maybe it's a super complex issue, who knows? Or is it that they've not ever thought about it? Or they might be, because our working geniuses and these ways that our brains are wired are in there. And those people that are ET, they really like permission and clarity and like just tell them the thing and go do it. So they might just not want to do it too. So they may not want to think about it. They really just want you to tell them. Okay. And that's part of that will. So, at that point you have to realize, okay, say, well, they might hate doing it, but this is really part of their job. They need to do this sometimes. Okay. And that's okay. You just be aware of that, be kind about it and say, hey, I get that, you don't like doing this and you're totally capable of coming up with a solution and addressing it. And you have my permission to do so, right? So you're discovering whether it's a truly not no, or if it's a maybe habit that they've asked you or habit to not think about it, or just maybe within their frustrations. And as a leader, we have to help people work in their frustrations sometimes. We don't want them to spend all the time in their frustrations because they'll be very disengaged and very worn out and very miserable. But sometimes we have to. We all have to. I have to do a lot of things I don't like doing. So we will have to do that. And as a leader, we need to support our team members in doing that and help them realize, hey, you've been, avoiding your frustration here by asking me this question, but you're capable of doing it and handling these questions without me. And that's good. So the third thing you might get, so we've already been through, like, they already knew. They just didn't want to do it because you always wanted to tweak it or whatever. The second thing, they didn't know because they didn't think about it. And then the third thing, they might really not know. And it might be above their pay grade, so quote unquote, or it might be something that maybe they're not capable of, doing it on their own. Like maybe you're the engineer and this person is the, customer service rep who happens to be fielding the phone call. Like this was a thing that you needed to answer. And there might be certain levels of maybe flow charts and systems you can create to help alleviate some of that. Or this just might be, part of the 20% that you have to help manage. Okay. Because there's probably going to be a level of like 80-20 of things that people can handle without you and 20% that you have to handle. But, if you're currently right now handling 90 to 100% of these questions, this is going to be a huge give back of your time to be able to say, you can handle that. And again, it will be helpful to start carving out, which things are within our process, which things should you be handling in your role and versus, this person's role and this person's role. And so there's going to be various levels of expectations around which questions are handled based on who it is. So how much responsibility does each person have? And that's okay. That's the way it should happen. This is how we develop our team members and develop roles and responsibilities within the team. So this is one way to do it. So when you get the question, you ask questions first. You don't always answer the question with an answer. You answer the question with a question. So you will likely get some pushback from this, especially from the people who maybe aren't naturally wired to have the answer already, and they really like you to tell them the answer. And you'll have to stop yourself from telling them the answer right away as well, because sometimes it's fun to tell them the answer, and sometimes it feels easier to just tell them the answer, just do it for them. So there's going to be some learning and some probably falls where you do tell them and forget to ask, but that's okay. That's part of your learning and your development. The other thing that I would like for you to do is I want you to think about something that annoys you, like a situation that drives you bonkers, okay? And ask yourself, what is driving me bonkers about this situation? And particularly about like somebody not taking responsibility. What is driving me bonkers? And what you'll likely find is that there's possibly something that you're reinforcing. So going back to the ABC model, what consequence am I doing that is actually reinforcing the behavior that drives me bonkers? And start to tweak that one too. I would recommend with both of these things, maybe start with one person. Like maybe there's somebody who's always in your office. Maybe start with that person because that might be simpler for you. But maybe there's a whole mindset thing of just make it a game. I'm going to ask a question. Every time someone asks me a question, I'm going to ask them a question back. Okay. You might become annoying. So watch the questions you're asking, keep them curiosity focused, keep them, focused on the task at hand, but try it. Sometimes that whole mindset flip can help you to realize that, gosh, I can take a whole bunch of hours worth of work off of my plate because I've given people permission to make these decisions. If this feels scary and you'd like some support in figuring out, okay, what sorts of things should I be getting help with, or what sorts of things should I be letting go of, reach out. I love to help leaders discover what's right for them to be doing and what's right for their team to be doing and how to best do that well. So if you enjoyed today's episode, please like it and share it with a friend. Leave a comment on the YouTube, and most importantly, leave a review so that other people can start to get the message out and start to see the podcast and really get some of this information in their hands, because this is how we're going to have better businesses, better teams, and better lives overall. So I will see you on the next episode of the Business Building Blocks podcast.
Thanks for tuning in to the Business Building Blocks podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss what's next. If you found value in our conversation, please leave a quick review, like, or share. It helps us reach more amazing listeners like you. For more resources and insights, visit KristinaSchmitt.ca, where you can find tools and support to empower your leadership journey. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you in the next episode.